Call the meeting of the Joint Committee on Finance for the West Virginia Legislature to order. First order of business is do we have a quorum? Clerk declares that we have a quorum. First order of business will be Dr. Peter Shirley, Deputy Secretary for the Department of Revenue, to review the numbers through May. Is that correct?
It's on. All right. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to join you all and to talk about this month's numbers. So I think you all have your packets, and so we'll just go ahead and dive in there to the first slide, which shows May's general revenue collections. And so if you look at the top line, which is that last row there that says total general revenue, in May we collected $349,875,000. The May estimate was $350,030,000, which puts us pretty much right on our estimate. We were $155,000 below estimate, so that's pretty spot on. Now, of course, that top line number can tells sort of maybe the most important story, but I think what's equally important are looking at the individual components and talking about where our revenues are growing, where they're not, where we are meeting estimate, and where we're not. So starting right there at the top with the personal income tax, it's the largest source of revenue in the state. The PIT finished about $6.8 million below estimate for May. A big reason for that is the timing of refunds. So if you recall, last month in April, the PIT was $88 million above estimate in April, and now we were $6.8 million below estimate in May. A big reason for that is, quite frankly, that we didn't get refunds out as quickly as we were anticipating, and a big reason for that is the car credit. So a little bit of a tangent here, but I think it's an important one. I think it's one that most of you will be interested to know about. So to date, for the car rebate, we have paid out $128.6 million. Of that, 125.4 was on the personal income side. So virtually all of it, 125 of that 128 has been on the personal side. And we had budgeted, the original estimate for that credit was $200 million for a full fiscal year. So there's still a lot of room there. A couple of notes on that. One, a lot of the corporate business returns haven't been processed yet. That's partially why that number is so low for them. We expect that to tick up over the next several months and into the fall as they file their returns. One thing that we're, obviously monitoring very closely is how many people ultimately end up claiming that and how much do we ultimately end up paying out. There's a couple of different things that go into that. One is obviously the knowledge of the credit. So one thing that we've heard a lot is that, for example, people didn't know that they had to pay their taxes on time to be eligible for the credit. And so they were very surprised when they received their letter in the mail and it said they weren't eligible. So it's likely that sort of picks up over time as people become more and more used to the parameters of the credit and how that works. It's also that they have to file a personal income tax return. There's an online portal for seniors, but that is they have to go through that process in order to get it. And so we're continuing to monitor that, but that's a big part of the reason that PIT in May looks the way that it does. Sales tax, the second largest tax in the state, we were $7.7 million above estimate, and we saw a growth from 2024 to 2025. So May 24 to May 25 of 4%. So we saw sales tax, at least for May, outpacing inflation. So that's always a good sign when your sales taxes are not only growing, but they're exceeding the rate of inflation. Severance tax is probably the most positive story from May in that it was $13.7 million above estimate. So severance had been sort of sluggish for most of fiscal 2025, and now prices are up, and that has really helped. That has really helped severance. Corporate net and B&O a little bit below, and then Interest income, which is something that if you've looked ahead in the slide deck, I have a slide just on interest income. So we'll come back to that a little bit more, but to sort of set the table there, you can see that interest is still doing really, really well. Flipping to the next slide. So now we're going from just May to fiscal year 2025 year to date. So these are the numbers through May. I know we have about a week left in the fiscal year, but this doesn't include anything from June. This is through the end of May. Highlights here. PIT is exceeding the estimate by $92 million. Again, at least some part of that is that people are not claiming as much in the car credit as we had originally budgeted for, and the growth from fiscal year 24 to 25 is down about almost $85 million, or about 4%. I will remind everyone that that is not entirely unexpected, as we continued to have personal income tax cuts that took place both last year with the child and dependent care credit, and as we continue to phase out Social Security, and on January 1 of this year of 2025, as we had an additional piece of the Social Security phase out that'll finish in January 1 of next year. And we had the 4% cut from the trigger, and on top of that, an additional 2% cut that the legislature passed with, it was Senate Bill 2033. That was the October special session from last fall. So in total now, we have just a little bit under 26% in personal income tax cuts since that process started a few years ago. And just while I'm at it, I'll mention that, you know, we don't think there's going to be a trigger for next year, or I'm sorry, at the end of this fiscal year. And even if we were to hit it, it wouldn't trigger next year, because that same Senate Bill 2033 delayed that by an additional year anyway. So we don't anticipate hitting the trigger this year. And even if we did, no cut would occur on January 1 of 26. It would occur on January 1 of 27. Going to sales tax. So sales tax, if you saw on the last slide, sales tax did really well in May, still up for the year and still on pace for growth, comparing 24 to 25 of about 2.3%. And so the latest CPI numbers that came out had an inflation rate for the past year of 2.4%. So year to year, we're growing right around on pace with inflation. So that's where you want to be. Severance tax, notice that the year to date, we're still below estimate year to date, but we had such a good May that it really brought us up to where we're almost on track to meet estimate. And we think by the end of June, we will do that. Corporate net exceeding estimate by a lot. Tobacco's sluggish. Tobacco is experienced. We've put into the estimates that tobacco products revenue declines over time, as you know, just as shifts in the population as people smoke less than they used to. But the rate of that decline has been much more pronounced than we estimated. And I suspect that at least part of that is due to people switching to alternative products that are not taxed in the same way. So that is more of a demographic and a cultural shift more than anything else. Interest income, you can see there, aside from the PIT, interest income is the thing that is, in terms of the largest amount, $55 million over estimate. Interest is somewhere that I think we have hedged a little bit against the downsides of the uncertainty in federal interest rate policy, and that, you know, interest is made on all of the cash balances that exist throughout the state, and it's hard to know how those cash balances will fluctuate, especially as, you know, we start to spend down a lot of the federal money that's come through. It's hard to know sort of both what the interest rate we're going to return on our principal is and how large that principal overall will be. But interest income still continues to greatly exceed estimate. Flipping again to the next page, now we have May for the State Road Fund. So this is just May for the State Road Fund. I think the biggest thing to point out here is that most of the estimates were pretty close. We ended up 8.8 million above estimate for the month, and not a whole lot to say there. I'll talk a little bit more if we flip to the next page on the year to date, where I think things are a little more interesting. If you sort of look at those top three revenue sources, registration fees, which are of course what people pay when they register their vehicle, the sales tax, and the motor fuel tax, combined, those are about on estimate. So registration fees are down, sales tax is up, and then the motor fuel tax is pretty close to estimate, being 1.7 million off of a 390 million tax is pretty dang close. And then they're also about the same thing in terms of growth from fiscal year 24 to 25. So we're slightly up relative to estimate and almost exactly on pace with last year. The one thing that stands out here to me that I really want to point out to you all is the negative 182 million on the miscellaneous line, and you'll see that I have an asterisk there on that. And so there were two one-time transfers in fiscal year 2024 to the State Road Fund. The first was Senate Bill 1026 that was in the 2023 first special session there in August, and that appropriated $150 million from the unappropriated surplus to the State Road Fund. And then there was also $10 million from the back of the budget in fiscal year 2024's budget bill, for a total of $160 million that's reflected in that $182 million number. So if you sort of back that out, it's a minus 20, not a minus 182. However, there was also an additional appropriation. There was one, it was Senate Bill 1002. There was a supplemental from the 2024 first special session that appropriated $150 million in June of last year. So it doesn't show up in these numbers because these numbers don't include anything through June. But since we don't meet for a few months, if you look at the State Road Fund in June after the fiscal year ends, that growth number will be even more negative because there's an additional 150 that isn't reflected yet that will be at the end of the year. And then I'd also point out that there's $100 million in the back of the budget for fiscal year 26 that we believe will be funded. So it'll be $310 million in one-time money in fiscal year 24 to the State Road Fund, 0 in 2025, and then currently planned 100 for fiscal year 2026. That's how that will currently shake out. And I wanted to spend a quick moment talking about that so that we were all on the same page. And so that is the year to date for general revenue and the State Road Fund. Now, if you flip to the next page, I have a couple of graphs here. I think it would be useful and informative to talk a little bit more about sort of revenue trends, sort of at a little bit of a longer time scale. And so what this graph is its total general revenue over it's an annualized 12-month average. And so another way to put that is each point on this graph is, you can imagine a hypothetical where what if so the most recent time point there is May 2025. What if the fiscal year 2025 wasn't July 2024 to June 2025? What if it was June to May? So what if you sort of had a 12-month period and you're looking at the total general revenue collections for each 12-month period? So it allows you to sort of see, it takes sort of the seasonality of our collections out of things and allows you to look at it over time. Because if you looked at this sort of just month by month, it would be crazy to look at. And so that's what this is. And so just what I think's worth pointing out here is you can sort of see the influx of, you can see where the pandemic started there, where we have that dip in the beginning of 2020. You can see the increase throughout 2021 and 2022. And then we peaked there right around the time that the House Bill 2526 got passed, and then you can see the effects of a lot of the tax cuts there, and so that's where we are at present day. Flipping to the next slide. So that was total general revenue. This next slide does exactly the same thing, but it breaks it out into the major components. So I have personal income tax there is the red line, sales tax is the orange line, corporate net is the green, severance is the blue, and then all other sources is the purple line. And a couple of things that I think this graph is really good at showing is both sort of which taxes matter the most. PIT and sales account for more than 80% of the state's total general revenue. You can see that sales tax has had a nice, steady growth over the past decade or so. PIT was also growing again. You can see the effects of the tax cuts there. And then you can also see what I think is really interesting is you can see that huge influx of severance money that we had in both in fiscal 22, but primarily in fiscal 23. So you can see that. And one thing that I really like about this graph that I think is interesting is that I think it's a little underrated how much of an effect severance has, or how much the energy industry in general has on our income tax collections. And a big part of that is obviously that, when the energy companies are doing well, people are earning more money, and royalty owners who own the rights to these resources also are receiving higher payments as a result of that, and that filters into our income taxes because those royalty payments are taxable income. And so it's not as pronounced, but you can see a bit of a bump in the PIT there as well as the severance starts to ramp up. The income tax also starts to ramp up, and then you see both of the effects there of, again, the tax cuts, but then also prices sort of stabilizing and returning to normal. The next slide, so this is interest income. And so interest income was included in that all other revenue sources there. And interest income is the single largest component, at least right now, of all other income, of that all other category. And what I think that this graph is particularly striking, that if you look back 10 years ago, we were effectively getting very, very little off of interest income. There was very little interest income that the state was earning. And again, you see here in 2022 and into 2023, that ramps up dramatically to where now we were getting almost $250 million on an annualized basis off of our interest income. That's, on a $5 million income, that'd be 5% of it. So it's a large amount that we were getting off of interest. And we've seen over the past few months that started to taper off, and that's going to be for a couple reasons. Interest rates have remained higher than we had, I think, initially anticipated. So that is good for interest income. But again, we earn off of all of the cash balances that the state has. And as those start to get spent down, this interest income is going to come down with it, because now, even if you're getting the same rate of return, you have a smaller principal on which that income is being generated. So that is something that we're watching closely, and that is something that I think I think it'll be very interesting to see how that shakes out over the next several years. So that's everything on the revenue side. On the last slide here, a couple of future challenges, things to just sort of keep in mind as we continue to look at our revenues, as we continue to plan for the future. On the state budget side, we have a couple of items that I think attention can be drawn to. One is PEIA. PEIA is obviously something that there's a lot of discussions regarding. A lot of work is being done to try and think about the long-term future of how we stabilize PEIA. And currently, these numbers are taken directly from the 6-year plan that was in the governor's introduced budget back in February. Sorry, $49 million is the estimated additional base build for fiscal year 2027 for the state plan, and these are the employer premiums only, and an additional $56 million for FY28. The Hope Scholarship is another budgetary item that we're keeping a close eye on, and the estimate is 190 million in base build for FY 27. I believe the deadline to apply for that and get full year funding has recently passed. So hopefully we'll be able to refine those numbers in the not too distant future now that we know what the actual enrollment, at least to receive a full year scholarship, will be going forward. And then obviously at the federal level, we're also keeping a close eye of what's going on in DC, both on the tax and on the expenditure side. So some of the things that we're keeping an eye on that to see how they ultimately end up shaking out. Bonus depreciation and R&D expensing are two pro-growth items that were in the original TCJA that have been decreased over time. Those are part of what's being discussed to make those permanent. And then obviously the taxes on overtime and tips, there were some discussions about that during the past regular session. Provider taxes are also an important component. And then on the expenditure side, changes to both Medicaid and SNAP are things that we're keeping a close eye on. And that's all I've got, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Announcement, the tour for the Aurora leaves at 9:15 from the lobby. So if we are not finished and you're going to Aurora, you need to be in the lobby at 9:15. If you have questions for Dr. Shirley, please come to the center, to the microphone, so that we can have the questions online and streaming for video. So are there any questions? Please come forward. Quiet group today. All right, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Delegate Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Doctor, for being here. My first question is, you talked about the severance being under and the corporate net being up. What do you attribute both of those to?
Severance year to date is almost exactly on estimate. So severance on the year to date there. So severance had a really good May. I think that's probably what you're referring to, that it was well above. So gas prices have come up pretty significantly over the past couple of months. I think we're at about $4 an MCF right now. So that's a big part of it, is that we had anticipated those coming up more earlier, and they simply did not. And now that they have, severance is doing better on that side. On the corporate net, we are up $60 million over estimate for year to date. So we're right on for severance, and then corporate net is still continuing to outperform estimate.
Yes, sir. And what do you attribute that corporate net being up to?
General business conditions.
And also the interest income. And so I'm glad to hear that that's up currently. Where does that go, and what pot does that go when we take the income off of that?
So it depends on what type of fund. So some funds are specifically dedicated to where the fund itself retains the interest. So BTI sweeps the money, invests it, and then sometimes it's returned. For this, general cash balances of the state that aren't specified that their money retains within their fund, all of that interest comes to general revenue.
And so we can appropriate it anywhere we'd like, essentially.
It's part of general revenue, yes.
And where's that? What is the balance? Is there a balance on that right now?
It depends on which specific, and so that's sort of why I've sort of been very nebulous about that, is that there are, hundreds of different funds throughout the state that their monies get swept, and they're all part of that collective pool. Some of the larger ones include the PIT Reserve Fund. $460 million is the balance in the PIT Reserve Fund, and all of its interest goes to general revenue.
Gotcha.
That's probably the single largest.
Yes, sir. And there's a number, and I didn't catch it, on what the unappropriated surplus is at.
The unappropriated surplus, I'm not sure what its balance is right now. I can get that for you, though.
Okay. And both of those, just to be accurate, because I know a lot of my co-members in here are wondering, could those potentially, by us, the legislature, be appropriated to the Flood Resiliency Fund if we so choose to do so?
The unappropriated surplus balance can be appropriated to whatever purpose the legislature sees fit.
And as well as the interest income, correct?
The interest income is a component of general revenue, which would then, at the end of the fiscal year, if there was a surplus, whatever excess is there would fall to the unappropriated surplus balance.
Thank you.
Delegate Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is like the Dunder Mifflin shareholders meeting. I don't know if you're a fan of The Office, Dr. Shirley.
I am.
But I wanted to ask you, you touched on the child tax credit that we did last year. I don't remember the fiscal note for that, how much we were expecting individuals to claim. Can you tell me how much has been claimed off of that thus far?
I cannot tell you how much has been claimed. I don't know that number, but I'm not north of 90% sure that the original fiscal note was $4.2 million.
Okay. All right. If you could get that to me so that I could compare. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Dr. Shirley.
Thank you, sir.
Now before the committee, we'll have an update on West Virginia State Parks and history and okay, we'll do the DNR first. Is that right? All right. Brad McMillan, Director of the West Virginia Division of Natural Resources. Director, you may go ahead.
Well, good morning and thank you for having me. And I'm excited to give you this update on our West Virginia State Parks. And speaking of, hey, how about Stonewall? What a great facility we have to offer. Yeah, exactly. They do need a big round of applause. I tell you, Rudy Henley and Andre Diamore and their teams do a fantastic job in providing this service to the residents and guests of West Virginia. And we are very proud to be their partners. And I hope you get a chance to get out and take in some of these natural resources and park amenities while you're here, because there's really a lot to see. So if I could take just a minute too before I get started, I'd like to introduce my team. They're the ones that really keep the DNR and park system, the operational side of it, up and going. My Deputy Director, Wendy Green's in the back. I have my legal counsel, Caleb Knight, and he's joined us very recently, but Caleb has came in and had a severe interest in DNR, everything DNR, and man, he has been a great fit. Chief of Parks, Dillard Price. And we also have our district administrator for Stonewall, Matt Baker, here. So anytime there he's in the back. So anytime you guys have an issue or concern or just need information, this is the team that can really help. And of course, I can't forget one of our biggest partners to my immediate left is Chelsea Ruby, and she'll be up soon. And I won't steal any of her thunder, but I tell you, the marketing, the advertising are such a huge part of it. And they do so much more for us than that, but I won't get into too much detail at the point. So let's start with our quick update. I had glasses here. Whoop, too far. All right, how do I back up? I'm not real technologically. Go to slideshow. There we go. All right. Now we're back at it. So first, we'll talk just a little bit about our parks. We've got quite a variety of parks in our system, but first and foremost, I think we ought to talk a little bit about our mission statement, and that is to promote conservation by preserving and protecting natural areas of unique or exceptional scenic, scientific, cultural, archaeological, or historical significance, and to provide outdoor recreational opportunities for the citizen of its state and its visitors. And I think we do a pretty darn good job at that, because look at what we actually have within our portfolio. 164,000 acres, 36 state parks, 9 state forests, 3 rail trails, and 1 natural area. So we're pretty diverse. Those are broken up into different types of parks. We have lodge and resort parks such as Stonewall, and we have 8 others across the system. Cabin and vacation parks such as a Bluestone, a Babcock, a Watoga. Our state forests, and we have a great inventory there. Cooper's Rock, for example, you're going to be hearing more and more about that this year as we are looking at expanding some products there. We have historic state parks, camping parks. You may may have heard a little bit about our newest state park, which is currently focusing hard on camping, Summersville. That's been a great success story for us. We have day use parks and rail trails. That's broken up even further into what each of those products have available to the guests and residents. 798 lodge rooms, 358 cabins, 1,500 plus campsites, 150 picnic shelters, playgrounds, and that is just a short list of some of those free day use amenities. Zip lines, spas, golf courses, full service restaurants, retail outlets, all staffed by 400 plus full-time employees and over 1,300 seasonal employees. The hospitality industry is a very diverse business, and those seasonal employees will range from housekeepers to groundskeepers to nail technicians, et cetera. Just anything and everything that we can do. We try to utilize as many seasonal positions as we can. How do we fund our state parks? 0265, you probably saw in this year's budget, we receive about $20.5 million in annual appropriated revenue. 3277 excess lottery funds. We receive about $1.5 million annually, and we typically target those numbers for repairs throughout the park system that makes some of the budgets for the individual areas. And of course, our 3265 state park operating revenue. This year, we're hoping it breaks a record again, and I won't spoil the rest of the show, but the numbers are very good. So talking about numbers and how we get there, I'm going to turn it over to Secretary Ruby, who's going to talk about marketing, advertisement, which all ties together. We really couldn't do the work we do and the ability to provide this product to the guests without the help from our friends in tourism. So Chelsea, come on up.
All right, good morning. Thank you all for having me back today. So yesterday I talked to a number of you about overall tourism marketing, but today I want to focus on that subset of our marketing that deals with state parks. So going back to 2018, that was the first year we actually had a dedicated appropriation for state parks and outdoor recreation marketing. Prior to that, the folks at state parks would have to wait until the end of the year, figure out how much money was left over, and do just a little bit of advertising. So prior to 2018, that number was usually in the ballpark of about 30,000 a year, maybe 40 on a good year. And now we have a dedicated line item. It's in the tourism budget for $1.5 million that's dedicated to state parks and outdoor recreation marketing. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how we use that. But I'll note first off, although the funding is separate and we manage it separately, it's fully integrated into everything else we do. So if you see a state park ad and a tourism ad, they look and feel very similar. With the exception of the logos, you're going to think it's a very similar ad and a very similar product. But out of this 1.5 million, we do all the things listed here: social media, TV, radio, print, search, email, native, digital. I hope most of you are seeing those state parks ads. When we look at the tourism budget, we spread it out very regionally. When we look at state parks, we do a lot of regional advertising, but we do spend a little bit more percentage-wise in state just because we have such a strong following in state for state parks. So a couple of things I just want to highlight that are working really well on the marketing side. Email marketing. So we have a huge database of everyone who has stayed at a state park in recent years, and we use those emails to be sending them really targeted content. So we can get really deep into knowing what time of year that person came, what park they went to. So if you went to Babcock last year in the fall, this fall we can ask you, are you ready to come back? Are you ready to see the leaves again? So really proud of how this is working and how sophisticated we've become in the last couple of years with email marketing. Last year, we sent close to 500,000 targeted emails to the state park subscriber lists, and we generate actual booking revenue each time. So we do a lot on social media these days, and we see a lot of conversions, meaning that we see people who see social media ads and they actually go and book within 3 days of seeing that ad. So it's something that really sticks with them and reminds them later that they want to do it. But I wanted to show you the top 3 best performing social media reels of this year. So the first one, and this one, I don't believe this one had any paid revenue behind it, got over 600,000 views. Oh, wait, sorry, it started on this side. This one got 112,000. Okay, so that was one. This one's about 400,000.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
And this last one, this is the one that got over 600,000. So all of those, one trend you probably noticed is they aren't big professionally done ads. So it doesn't look like a TV commercial. It really looks like something that someone shot with a phone that we put music behind, we put text over. We're seeing these are the ones that are performing the best. We see specifically ones like the one that did the best was the Blennerhassett one. Did you know there's an island in West Virginia? So unique kind of quirky facts do really well. And then the other ones that do well are the listicles. So the like 5 places you can go, 3 top spots for this or that. But we see, like I said, this isn't just something we do that inspires people. This is something that we've seen over the years as we're able to get more and more targeted. We're seeing actual conversions and actual bookings. So again, on the website, you see we just launched a new booking engine. I shouldn't call it new, it's a refresh. We're always looking at our booking engine to see, which ways are people getting into the system? Are they searching by specific parks? Are they searching by lodging types? What's working best? And we're making optimizations off that. So we just launched a new update. We've got another one coming here. This is a sneak peek. There's going to be a complete website redesign that'll be launched in about the next month. And this is a sneak peek of what it looks like. And what I really like about this one is we took 5 years of data and analytics to look at how are people using the website, how are they getting information. We found that people need a lot more content when they're on site. So I don't know how many of you who've looked at Stonewall's website since you've been here, but we were seeing that was a real deficit in our web analytics as people would be at the park and they would want to know what's in the restaurant downtown or downstairs, or what is on the menu at the pool restaurant or something like that, very specific things. And we found that that's what they weren't able to find on our website. So as you see this new website come in the next couple of months, you'll see that we're really focusing on that on-site experience and trying to figure out how do we get folks who are already at our parks to spend more money, to do more things. So more to come on that soon. This is an example of a state parks ad that we ran on Facebook. And I know that when we come in, we give you these huge numbers of like, here's how the revenue is doing over the year. Here's how it did over the last 6 months or the last 6 years. So I wanted to pull a really specific example. So that ad that you just saw on here, it was a Facebook ad. It was a generic booking ad that was trying to get people to book a night. We spent about $50,000 and it generated $254,000 that month. So this was in March. It was our first spring month. But you see, we're getting about a $5.53 return on that $1. Keep in mind that that's low because that's just on the online booking. When they come to our park, they're going to eat, they're going to spend money on activities. But I wanted to give this as an example to say that I know a lot of times we show you the TV ads and it feels all very inspirational. But on the state park side, it's more granular. It's more about booking this specific hotel room and coming to this specific park and riding this specific boat and having this meal, et cetera. So really excited with the progress that we've made on the social ads and the return that we're getting. Another just fun thing that we have launched this year is an online store. So we got a lot of questions from people wanting the Almost Heaven shirts who wanted the state park branded merchandise. You can buy those things in the gift shops at all of our state parks, but we wanted to launch an online store this year. So it's generated a little over $250,000 since we launched it. I'm really proud of it. There's a great team working on it who have really enjoyed the project and see this as just another way to bring in some additional revenue. All right, Brett, back to you.
Well, thank you, Chelsea. And as you can see, the tourism team does a myriad of work for the park system, and there's so much behind the scenes. I couldn't even begin to tell you. I mean, from helping us set our rates, our signage program, I mean, everything from top to bottom. They are truly deeply involved. And Chelsea, we really appreciate all that help. She was also instrumental in helping you guys that may have been here years ago appropriate some additional funds for us. And the recent investments that we put in have been able to renovate all of our lodges and cabins, the Kanawha State Forest Campground electrical upgrade, which is a big component in today's world. You know, when our campgrounds were built back in the 60s, you had a station wagon and a small Airstream behind. Now that's just not the case. I mean, there's areas where we need 100 amp systems, and that kind of an upgrade is a huge one, very expensive at times, but so beneficial to that guest who's traveled from outside of West Virginia, who's expecting that type of product to be here. Blackwater Falls State Park overflow camping and sewer projects. Many of you may remember a couple of years ago, there was some concern in the local area that we were going to have to close that entrance road in October because of the numbers of people that were coming into the area. So these overflow parking lots do help to aid and benefit there. Same thing at Cacapen. Chief Logan State Park Hatfield McCoy Connector Trail. We're very excited about that when we launched it not long ago, and the success has been great. We're seeing a lot of folks that are actually able to drive to the lodge, unload their vehicle, and ride from the park to the actual Hatfield McCoy Trail without having to trailer it back up and go somewhere else. So big win. Hopefully more of those in the future, and we've got one or two that we're working on, but still in the early phases. Beach Fork Bluestone Canal to Endaway Tigert Lake restroom renovations with ADA improvement. That project is moving, and there's still more to do on the restroom improvement side of it. Some of the bigger projects that you'll see coming out this year, Cass Scenic Railroad State Park Campground, which I believe is going to be a huge success. 100 campsites in that area, and it's we don't have a campground in Pocahontas County that isn't extremely successful. Watoga is one of the, I mean, it is a premier site, and there's just never enough spaces. If you guys try to book at any of our campgrounds or even our lodges and cabins, you'll realize that same challenge. So the more we can expand these facilities, the more we can provide those guests coming to West Virginia. Same at Lost River. Cooper's Rock, I referenced it earlier. The 12 cabins, 25 campsites, and the additional facilities will be online very soon. These cabins are going to be very unique. Chelsea and her team helped design those. They're A-frame. They're phenomenal. I can't wait to see those things rent. I almost guarantee you they're going to be hard to get into, but that's okay. It's a good problem to have. Pipestem and Hawks Nest Tram. Very excited about these projects. Those projects were pieces of the operation that had been in operation since the 70s, and there's very few manufacturers left, and it seems like a huge price tag, but what a great amenity we have. And then for those of you who were able to come to Pipestem for the November interims and actually get to stay at Mountain Creek, that's going to be quite an experience for you. So we're really excited to showcase that. ADA bathhouse improvements still in process, and of course the Elk River Trail new property and visitor center construction. We were able at the Elk River Trail to utilize an old facility that was well known in the local community called the Red House. We've modeled our visitor center to match the appearance of the old red house. So there's a lot of community support with that particular project, and it's working. These investments are realizing a tremendous return. Our attendance is through the roof, but our revenue is one that we really like to talk a lot about. And when we talk about revenue, we can't forget about the expense side of it. So as of the end of FY24, we were at almost 77% self-sufficient, which is a huge number. In the park system and across the nation, the national average is somewhere between 60 and 65%. So you can see West Virginia is well ahead of the national pace. And by the way, we are hosting the National Association of State Park Directors at Canaan Valley in September. So we're going to bring all those directors and chiefs from all over the country and show them just how great West Virginia is. Some of our leaders, Little Beaver, Blackwater, Babcock, Watoga, those are the top, but we have several more that are in the 80+%. Some of the bigger areas that have most revenue opportunities definitely are the ones that we like to analyze. And this graph to me is just amazing. I mean, you look back at 2015, we were looking at closing areas. We actually pulled out of some WMAs, and now look at that chart. I mean, we are 40 million in revenue. We've doubled that in a 10-year span. And that's thanks to Chelsea and her team's marketing, the investments made by the legislature and the governors, the interest still. And I'll tell you, Governor Morrissey loves our park system. You can probably tell that by the Mountaineer Mile trails. I'm so excited to have already had him at many of our areas this early in his tenure. And I think it is just refreshing that we'll be able to continue this operation and provide these parks to the public. We talked about last year being a record-setting year. Look at this. Apples to apples comparison this time last year, we're $857,000 ahead of pace. That's phenomenal. So Chelsea, thanks to your team and everybody involved to make that a realization. So I'll keep it short. I know the day is full of activities and field trips and plans, but we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of the director? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now before the committee is Chelsea Ruby to talk about tourism and the update on history and culture.
All right. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you. I want to add one quick thing on the state parks presentation. I have been before this committee more times than I can count asking you, can we just have a little bit more money for state parks? We've got one more project we want to do. And every time we try to bring you data to say, look, we need more campgrounds, we need more this, we need more that. And we've really tried to follow the data and make sure we're investing in the right places. But just want to wrap this up with a huge thanks to all of you for believing in the product, for believing in state parks and continuing to invest, because surely we can all see those investments are paying off. So I'm happy to take any questions as it relates to tourism, arts, culture, and history funding. Also very appreciative for the trust that you've placed in us, especially on the arts, culture, and history side, where the last session we had to ask for some extra money to finish up some projects, to pay some things that were over budget, et cetera. But we're moving along in that process. As of today, we are this close to having the agencies completely combined in OASIS, which has been a much bigger undertaking than I ever imagined. But we're very close to doing that and really working hard to get our financial house in order. So happy to take any specific questions you all have as to that process, but wanted to say thank you and let you know that it's moving along.
Any questions of the director? Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anything else to come before the committee? For the chairman?
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Gentlemen, ask that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, like sign. Thank you very much.